Hey guys, it's me, your boy RyanSwag here. So Sinister Cup is finally over, and I do have a recording of my weighted Sinister Cup matches, so I want to go over them with you. Overall, I really enjoyed the Sinister Cup. I felt like it was a very simple, approachable cup for beginners, and if you don't know, the Swagman is kind of a beginner to the Silph Arena scene. This is actually my first ever Silph Arena tournament. So as far as the two tournaments I did compete in, I did the Oshkosh one here, where I went 3-1, and then I did the Madison one, where I went 5-0. Had I known I was going to the Madison one, I would have wanted to weighted it anyways because there was more people, which means more points, and I got 5-0, so come on, man. But I didn't know I was going to it because weather, and it's like 2 hours away, so yeah. At any rate, here are my Oshkosh battles. So starting out, my first opponent is Vita Bella Morte, and she has one Pokemon on her team that I absolutely did not want to see. I was actually praying people wouldn't have Legacy Haunters, and of course, my first opponent has a Legacy Haunter here. I fear Haunter a lot because the PV Poke Trainer just completely annihilates me with it, and then I did like 10 practice matches with Monoholics where he just like took me out like 8 or 9 times with his Haunter, so I was pretty shell-shocked by Haunter, but because of all of these Haunter losses, I did have a lot of Haunter experience, and my basic strategy against a team that has Haunter in it is to lead with Cresselia, back it up with Steelix, and then back that up with either the Bastiodon or Medicham. So that's exactly what I did here. So leading in with Cresselia, I ended up catching the lead with the Haunter, which is really nice, and she kept the Haunter in, which is even better. The thing that really scares me about Haunter when Monoholics and PV Poke uses it is that they like hide it until like the very end, like it's like this ghost that's always looming. So being able to dispose of it immediately is definitely a good feeling. Next up is Bronzong, and you will see that I run into a problem trying to switch out my Cresselia. The majority of my experience in battling is by using the PV Poke Trainer, which makes switching really nice. So I didn't have any real experience trying to do Cresselia switches, and yeah, Cresselia switches are kind of terrible. I switched to Steelix because I feel like Steelix has a general advantage over the Bronzong. I feel like for this tournament in general, Bronzong is a pretty weak pick. Might work better against teams that have Poliwrath on them, but my team doesn't have Poliwrath on it. So no real fear of the Bronzong coming from the Swagman here. Annihilated with the Earthquake, and we are down to our final Pokemon. We have Steelix, full HP, no shields, against my team, which is a Cresselia and a Bastiodon, no shields. Now, I didn't calc this out. I don't know if this was like a misplay on Vita's part here, but I feel like going straight Earthquake might have been the better move. I'm honestly not 100% sure, though. Maybe they need like a Crunch and an Earthquake. They'll only have time for that to really win. But I believe she does go for the Earthquake here, taking me out. And then I finish off with the Cresselia, and the main reason why I like Cresselia over the other Confusion user Psychics in this cup is that she's so tanky that she can take hits, and even though I don't have the second move there, Ice Beam isn't 100% necessary to take things out because, you know, the Future Sight is kind of heavy. So I lead in again with the Cresselia, and I end up catching Poliwrath, which is another W. For whatever reason, Vita here keeps in the Poliwrath. I don't know if this is like a misplay on their part, or maybe they don't have a good response to the Cresselia. But in comes the Steelix, and once again, having issues on the switch. I bring in the Medicham here to just kind of like annihilate this thing. Medicham really doesn't have too much to fear from the Steelix, and as a Steelix user, when I switch in Steelix, I just plan on Earthquaking and seeing what happens, but most players do try to like salvage the fight as best as they can, I guess would be a way to put it. But bringing it down, they got their final two. We got the Poliwrath again, coming in with the Power-Up Punch. I can't remember if I win this skirmish or not. I think they end up killing me, but their Poliwrath is basically donezo. Cresselia single taps it out, and then we have Dusclops. So Dusclops is stuck against the Cresselia and a Steelix in the end with no shields, and I have 2 shields, so yeah, it's basically game there. One thing you will notice when I fight against Vita Bella Morte here is that I usually try to conserve at least 1 shield for the end game, just because of the threat of Haunter. But I don't think she uses Haunter again at all. We'll have to see what happens in this third fight. But yeah, leading with the Bronzong, I switch into Steelix. Steelix don't care. Because I have enough energy, I think I'm going for the Crunch and the Earthquake. Yeah, I do. Basically, fighting PV Poke and fighting the Game Press crew enough, whenever I'd lose a lead matchup, I would just switch to Steelix. And then if I had enough energy, Crunch and Earthquake. But if I was like on the fritz, on the energy race there, I'd just go with the Earthquake and just let it happen. The main reason why is because then you kind of trap the Poliwrath in, and then whatever you have to just take out Poliwrath can come in and effortlessly take out Poliwrath. In this case, it is the Cresselia. So there I get kind of locked in again with those confusions. Yeah, and that could have been extremely disastrous for me. But I do end up getting in the Medicham, and they end up switching out the little Mawile dude. I have shields, so there's basically no winning there for the Mawile, so they switch to the Bronzong. And there's no real winning for Bronzong against Medicham either, in my opinion. I feel like Medicham carries the advantage in the move pool department. They're basically a similar neutral matchup. So, yeah. Confusion, hit neutral. Counter hits neutral. But I got cooler charge moves. And there goes the battle. And we go on to, my next opponent. So my next opponent here is the Camps, and the Camps is using the ultra spicy Alolan Sandslash on their team. So looking at their team over, I'm just like, okay, Medicham and Alolan Marowak. That's like all I need to use because there's not a whole lot that really threatens them. I mean, Mawile kind of threatens the AWAC, but I have a Fire Spin AWAC, so that deals with the Mawile. Overall, the only Pokemon that truly is spooky on this team is Dusclops, and Dusclops is just a spooky dude in general. So the way I approach this fight is just using Medicham and Alolan Marowak and just winning. So starting out the fight, I lead Alolan Marowak, and I end up catching the A-Slash. So A-Slash goes down pretty quickly here, whipping out the Bone Club, and I got the Fire Spins. A-Slash ain't making it out of this one. They end up shielding it, and they're going for the Bulldoze. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't calced out this fight at all. I don't know how much Bulldoze would do to me, so I decided to shield it. Play a little safe there. They bring in the Mawile to deal with my Marowak here, but Marowak doesn't really have anything to fear from Mawile, in my opinion, so I just play it straight. Gonna fight this thing out. I really don't care about Mawile. And now they are down shields, and their down Pokemon is pretty much a done deal from this point going forward. You will notice here, though, that I didn't get all of my bubbles there. And I should have gotten all my bubbles. That wasn't some advanced swagman trying to play this guy kind of thing. This happens again in another fight. And I think I ended up being like how I was sitting at this tournament. And like the way my finger was dragging on the screen because of the way I was sitting. It was like my fingernail was like causing a disconnect. I don't know. At any rate, next fight comes in. They lead Medicham. I lead with the Whack. I end up shielding the Psychic because I know that against a Fire Spin Alolan Marowak, the Medicham can overcome it if it goes with the Psychics and, the Marowak doesn't shield them. So rather than giving them that advantage, I decided to go for the shield on the first one there. They bring in the Mawile again, so once again, no fear of the Mawile. I wanted to get off the Bone Club, but didn't. Bring in Medicham, and not a whole lot to fear here either. One thing I noticed from all Mawiles I fought in my 9 opponents that I faced throughout the season is none of the Mawiles tried to go for the Play Rough. And they'd have energy advantage. In my opinion, they'd have the energy to go for the Play Rough, but they never did. Which would have put me in a more like precarious situation. Do I want to shield that, or do I want to hope that it's not Play Rough? It would probably definitely be Play Rough if it's Medicham, so I don't know why none of them went for that, but they didn't. Yeah. Then we go into round 3, and there he is, the spooky man, the Dusclops. I hate fighting this thing so much. And yeah, so I decided to play it out with the Alolan Marowak, see how this goes for me. I go for the straight Shadow Ball, hoping that they think that this is a shield bait. Does not work out for me, so Alolan Marowak is going down pretty quickly here. I believe I do shield, trying to go for the second Shadow Ball. Oh, man. But yeah, no, they used the double Shadow Punch. Classic. You think the Swagman would see through that, but he didn't. But yeah, no, I ran into the finger drag situation again there, and that's when I realized what was happening. I don't have long fingernails. I clipped my fingernails, but like it was just the way my finger was positioned with the way I was sitting, and I'm glad I realized it then, you know? Awkward. So now they're stuck in with the Mawile again. This time Mawile did not have energy advantage, so it wouldn't have been the wise choice for them to try to go for the Poliwrath there. Yeah. I don't know if it's just my team or just the people I was fighting against, or maybe a little bit of both, but I felt like Mawile has never scared me, like, ever in this cup. It's just like, maybe it scares more ghost-heavy teams. My team is more steel-heavy, so no fear. Oh man, is this some overkill? Yeah, that is some overkill. So, good fight from the Cramps. Next up is the Wild Monk. So, Wild Monk here is using a pretty standard team. Driftbloom, Dusclops, Little Marowak, so triple Ghost is going on. Poliwrath, which is pretty standard, and then Steelix everywhere. Mawile, also pretty much everywhere. So I decided to approach this team with a basic fighting double steal strategy, just to take advantage of the ghosts. And the way I approach using double steal is typically when I do use it in the Sinister Cup, it's because I feel my steel types are stronger than their steel types, so I don't get caught by them. For example, if Wild Monk were to be using like a Empoleon, then I'd be a little bit more wary. But I feel like with the fighting type and the two steals, this team is pretty much handled. So leading in with the Medicham, I do not catch the lead, and I switch immediately to not Steelix. Yeah, no, that was a total miss-switch from myself. Horrible mistake. You always switch in the Steelix, but for whatever reason I tapped the Bastiodon, and these are the kind of mistakes that we have to live with because it's just how the tumbleweed tumbles. Definitely my user error there. So yeah, if you switch in Bastiodon instead of Steelix, then, you know, Poliwrath or Medicham comes in and they just completely ruin your life. Like, you have nothing to hit them with. So yeah, so the fight's pretty much done from that point forward. Good news, though, for me at least, is that I do get the reveal that this is a Hydro Pump Poliwrath, a Mudshot Hydro Pump Poliwrath, which is good information to have for the next two fights because that surprise factor is no longer there. So definitely an L because miss-switching, giving them Omega advantage, but kind of a W as far as scouting goes. We'll call it that. We'll call it that. So yeah, I do my best to salvage this fight as best as I can, but yeah, it's pretty much done. Like every PV poke battle I've had where I've miss-switched in the Bastiodon pretty much ends up this way no matter what. Poor team. They never stood a chance. So in this next fight, I go with my pretty standard comp, which is the Driftbloom, Medicham, and Steelix, which is like my core kind of team. I'm able to catch the lead with the Driftbloom, assuming that they would go with the AWAC again. I feel like most people, if they win with a team, they may as well go with it a second time, because if it's not broke, you know, don't fix it. So, yeah, good call. Caught the lead, technically. I think they got both Bone Club baits on me, though, which kind of sucks. And if I knew it was going to be a Bone Club bait, or if I thought I was going to win CMP, I might have used it sooner, but it is what it is. They bring in the Spooky Dusclops next. They're able to Spooky Punch me because I wasted all my shields on that Marowak. And I bring in the Steelix because even though I always want to call it like Shadow Guy, Dusclops, even though Dusclops has the advantage over Steelix, I feel like Steelix has enough of an advantage over this thing. Just got to crunch it down. Going in with the Fire Punch, I go in with the Crunch. Then we have the Poliwrath in the end. And I got the Medicham, so I'm not terribly concerned. And then when it comes to Mudshot, Hydro Pump, Poliwrath, I know that I'm able to get to Psychic faster than they're able to get to the Hydro Pump, and that the Hydro Pump wouldn't necessarily like KO me either because the Mudshots are too soft. I was able to get the shield, and that is the battle. Then we go into round 3, using the same team again, under the basic philosophy of if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And as a result, they're able to catch me on the lead. I switch to Steelix, which is nice, and I end up against Poliwrath. And I really do like the Steelix Poliwrath situation because I feel like it's a fight that I'm able to navigate pretty well. You just use Earthquake. That's it. That's all you gotta do is use Earthquake. Either you hurt them a lot or you get a shield out of them. And every now and then, you will be able to get an extra crunch in, which is nice for like a little extra damage, maybe a little extra shield baiting. So I was able to pull that off. And then I bring in the Drifblim because this is a dynamic punch Hydro Pump Poliwrath. Drifblim does not have to fear ice punches coming from the sky, which is really nice. So definitely enjoy fighting these things. If I was able to count better, I would have known it was a dynamic punch, but I'm still really bad at counting. So I was like, don't want to get hit by a Hydro Pump. That's not my goal today. They bring in the Mawile. I bring in the Medicham, so no fear here from the Medicham. Just like another basic, easy Steel-type Pokemon for me to farm up on. And then we get the final Pokemon. It is the AWAC. I'm able to reach the Psychic, which is pretty brutal coming off of 2 power-up punches, so basically takes them out. They use whatever they have to take me out, but this fight's already won. Notice how smooth I am at touching those bubbles. I need a little bit more experience with that. Alright, then we have my final opponent, the Real Starko. And man, this guy coming into this tournament with a Frostlass and a Toxicroak. Like, come on, man. So Toxicroak, I don't know how to really approach it because like it's a fighting type, so you think, okay, I beat it down like any other fighting type. I got the Medicham, so I'm thinking I've got a pretty good advantage there, and then I got Cresselia as a backup. Like, why would this guy ever bring in Toxicroak? But Toxicroak is a pretty sinister Pokemon for this cup if your team of 3 is not prepared to manage it. Yeah, and then as far as the Frostlass goes, Frostlass, I have nothing to fear from Frostlass at all. I think it's a really bad pick. But the Real Starko, probably realizing this, did not bring in Frostlass at all against the Swagman. So going in, I go for the basic Medicham double Steel strat. They start out with the AWAC. And here, I think is like a little bit of a misplay for myself. I wanted to put pressure on it, thinking that it was a Fire Spin Alola Marowak, but it's actually a Hex Alola Marowak, which means Medicham does not have any real hope against this thing at all. All it has to do is do straight Shadow Balls, and that's it. That's like the GG right there. So I switch in Steelix, and here I make yet another misplay. Like, so the goal with Steelix is that you just soak their charge move, and then you just like go in for the bait. I should have used the Earthquake. I didn't, and they didn't even shield it. So that was like the Omega mistake, in my opinion, that cost me this match in a really big way. I just like didn't know what to expect. Like, you know what to expect from Toxicroak, but I didn't know what to expect from it in terms of like damage and speed. So ended up just kind of blazing me over there. And then in the end game here, we do have Bastiodon versus Alola Marowak, which is a little bit in Bastiodon's favor. And I have a shield. They have a shield. But I don't know what their final Pokemon is, and they're able to just straight Shadow Ball the heck out of me here. They bring in Cresselia, and if I were to have shielded one of those Shadow Balls, I think maybe my situation would be a little bit less dire here, but it's pretty much done over anyways, even though Bastiodon should be able to beat a Cresselia. When you're this far down, just the sheer bulk of Cresselia, there's no getting ahead against that thing. So definitely a really vicious match from the Starko there. So my next team formation here, I'd like to call the I don't want to lose to Toxicroak. Right? I go Cresselia, double Ghost. Like, I'm not giving this thing a hit on nothing because I don't want to lose to Toxicroak. That's like the panic mode I'm in right now. So I am up against the Alola Marowak. I'm using the Drifblim. I'm shielding them Shadow Balls and going in for the Ominous Wind. One thing I noticed like throughout the fight is that he never goes for the Bone Club, and I think he told me after the fight that he doesn't even have a secondary move unlocked on his Alola Marowak. So definitely some solid crazy play from this guy here. Just straight Shadow Ball. That's all you need on your wax to win. Especially when people are anticipating Fire Spin too. So there he is, the monster, the Toxicroak. I decided to try to dish out as much damage as I can to this thing. I don't want to see this thing. I want to see this thing dead. Bring in Cresselia to finish it off. They bring in their Cresselia, so now we are in a Cress versus Cress situation. I've got no shields remaining, and they're going in with the Aurora Beam. So they do have the better hit on me, since I have only one charge move unlocked. So a little bit at a disadvantage here. I can't remember what their 6th Pokemon was. Probably some sort of ghost. So they're going in with the Aurora Beam, and then I switch to the Alola Marowak, basically to try to finish this thing off with like little fear from the Cresselia, and then have like a little bit of an advantage on the final Pokemon that's coming in, which is Toxicroak. Then we go into our final fight, once again using the I don't want to lose to Toxicroak team. It worked the first time, it works the second time, right? So same situation, I switch to the Drifblim, they switch in the Cresselia, so I decided to go for the Shadow Ball. Cresselia's tankier Pokemon in general typically seem to choose to not shield against the Drifblim because they know that they're able to soak the Ominous Winds a bit. So I decided to go for the Shadow Ball, and I landed a pretty solid hit on it. So right now I'm feeling pretty good, and I'm up against the Toxicroak. Once again, similar situation. I'm going for the Ominous Wind because I want to hurt this thing, bait shields, do what I can. I don't want to deal with Toxicroak ruining my life no longer. And I go hyper aggressive on it here. What I should have done in retrospect, because this is the fight that I lose as well, is switch immediately to the Cresselia, but I thought I was sitting pretty good against this guy here. I mean, I had a shield, a near full HP Cresselia, and a full HP Alola Marowak up against his single Alola Marowak that only has one shield. So the way I saw this end fight was I would power up to my charge move on Cresselia, bait the shield because they don't want to get hit by it. Then I would bring in my Alola Marowak, shield their Shadow Ball, and then whip out my own Shadow Ball and take the victory. So going for that strategy here. However, I underestimated how fast Hex charges up to Shadow Ball, and they're able to get to the Shadow Ball before I could get to my Shadow Ball, ultimately KOing me. So, good fight, the Real Stark 0. But yeah, that was my weighted tournament. If you are curious about the Madison tournament where I went 5-0, like half the matches I recorded ended up getting corrupted, I think because I ran out of memory space or something like that. But there is the video of my match against the Hypnosis Project HQ on his YouTube channel there, so link in the description to that if you want to see the Swagman in action. So yeah, if you enjoyed this content, comment below, let me know what's up. If you feel like the Swagman sucks, yeah, drop a comment and tell me how bad I suck. Swagman needs to get better. And yeah, going into the Ferocious Cup here, not too happy about Ferocious because of the whole Umbreon thing, but I'm going to do my best and take out all the Umbreons I can before this month ends. Oh yeah, subscribe to me if you haven't already.